Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're calling in from. Thanks for joining us today. We have our first webinar with Intrepid Metals, which is super exciting. So looking forward to hearing about their copper exploration projects in southeastern Arizona. With me, I have CEO Ken Brophy, who's going to do a walkthrough of the presentation, followed by a Q&A session. So if you have questions, feel free to enter them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to those. As always, this presentation will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can find them on the company's presentation on their website. And with that out of the way, I'd like to introduce Ken. Hi, Ken. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for having me.
Yeah, really interested in getting to hear what you've been doing in Arizona. So maybe you could start with a little bit of background on yourself and then jump right into the projects.
Sure. I've been involved in the resource sector for a little over 25 years now. The gray beard and gray hair is proof of it. I think I've got a little bit more over the last 2 years than many previous years. I've been involved in many different companies over the years, and primarily within the kind of exploration development stage. I've yet to work at an operating mine, and to be honest with you, I don't really have a lot of interest in doing so. So the development scale, or the left side of the Lassonde curve, is where I enjoy being.
Awesome. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been up to with Intrepid?
Yeah, so I'll just go through our deck here. You've done a fine job of letting everyone know there may be some forward-looking statements. Essentially at a high level, Intrepid's still a very well-structured, dual-listed company. We're currently on the TSX and the OTCQB. And over the last year or 18 months, essentially, we've built out 3 exciting projects, all in Arizona, which focus on essential metals, such as copper, silver, and zinc. While, I could call these critical metals as an example, which both zinc and copper are listed, I prefer essential metals, as they've been essential for the last 100 years, and I think they're going to remain essential and only even more important over the next 100 years, just based on some of their uses. So, once again, over the last 18 months, we completed a total of 6 property transactions, with 4 of these being part of a consolidation effort of a district scale advanced stage opportunity that we've called Corral Copper. So Corral is certainly a real exciting and unique opportunity, as due to the previous fragmented land ownership, the area has been kind of starved of the capital required to really unlock the value within that district. There's been some historical small-scale mining that took place in the early 1900s, like many areas across Arizona. But since that time, that fragmented land ownership has really restricted the district scale approach required to unlock the value within that area. So I already touched on that our capital structure, very well structured. As you can see here, we have under 50 million shares outstanding, with a strong insider ownership, and it only continues to grow, with insiders still buying over the last several months. Prescat's our largest single shareholder, and they've been very supportive as we've focused on growing our company. We completed an initial $3 million financing in May of 2022 at 20 cents, and have kind of utilized that capital essentially to build out our asset base as a way to create shareholder value during an initial stage, certainly during the tough market environments. But we're now ready to transition and create value from the drill bit, taking the assets that we've completed and moving it forward. So going from the boardroom to the field. So all based on some of the limited marketing efforts to date, and we're certainly happy to work with Adelaide as we now start to try to build out our story. After focusing on building out our asset base, or corralling that fragmented land ownership, we feel now it's a great time to start drilling, and we can kind of grow our market cap significantly, similar to some of the other well-known Arizona copper-focused success stories, as you can see here. So as I mentioned, all of our projects located in Arizona. Our Corral Copper project, I'll speak to a little bit more on. We certainly have our Tombstone South, and as you can see, both of these projects are located in Cochise County, and they Mesa well further to the north. just what I want to point out here is, you can see some of the green areas, the national forest primarily, and that was a no-go zone for us. While there's some great geology and projects that fall within national forests, it can take up to 2 years and legal battles just to get a simple drill permit. So we elected to stay clear of complicated areas. Once again, Cochise County has a long history of mining. You have the Bisbee mine that's just south of us, Tombstone, Gunnison, Johnson Camp, great rail and power and road network. So it's a great county to be in. So that's one of the reasons why we fundamentally tried to focus our efforts on Cochise County. Arizona, I won't go into too much detail here, but it's a great jurisdiction to work in. Once again, if you know where to go and where to avoid. Largest mineral producing state. But what I really like about it is more of our investment dollars can go straight into the ground. We can work year round. We don't have to fly helicopters around. There's no seasonality. There's no road, like ice roads we need to build. So once again, I feel like it's a great jurisdiction to work in because our investment dollars go straight into the ground and more towards discovery rather than logistics. So Corral is an advanced stage exploration and development opportunity. As I mentioned, we've been corralling a lot of that fragmented land ownership within the area where it has a history of historical mining with some very high grade copper. We've now just completed a 3-kilometer trend of shallow mineralization, which I'll kind of show you in the next slide or two. And it's important to note that this 3-kilometer trend only considers about 50 or less than 15% of our entire property boundary. And the source of a lot of this mineralization, which is more CRD style mineralization. So the source, i.e. porphyry, is yet to be found. And we have a number of exciting target areas within our tenements. I'll just point out, you can kind of see some of the historical mining efforts and just how shallow a lot of this mineralization has been within Corral Copper. So I touched on just the location, Cochise County. You can see Bisbee, Tombstone, Gunnison, Johnson Camp. But it's really, we've been fortunate to be able to consolidate such a large amount of property in this area. Acquiring property in Arizona is not easy at the best of times. And we now have 9,600 acres. And it's important to note that 1,800 of that is patent mining claims, as well as some additional surface rights. So when it comes to permitting a drill program or advanced stage exploration development, owning the surface rights is extremely important. And we're off to a great start based on what we have here. We touched on the fragmented land ownership, and I think this slide helps people understand some of the fragmented land ownership just based on some of the different colors that are associated with the other companies that have done exploration within the district. So it has been fragmented exploration as well. Certain people would only have certain claims to the north, certain claims to the south, so it's yet to be looked at as a district scale opportunity. Historically, 50 million pounds of copper at 1.57%. So there is some very high grade copper, which I'll kind of show you in a moment. And once again, very, very shallow. So while no core remains, we do have 36,000 meters of drilling data within the district. So we have our Cortland North, Cortland South, and Man as the areas that the majority of the historical drilling is focused on, but yet there's still lots of room within this 3-kilometer trend for expansion. So we took the SA data and threw it in the Leapfrog, and the heat map just kind of illustrates some of the high-grade copper and gold, silver, and zinc. So it's a very mineral-rich jurisdiction. We know that mineralization remains open in many different areas, and I think the shallow nature of this will be something the market gets very excited about once we start drilling it. I touched on the shallow mineralization. As you can see, the historical drill logs as well as SA data, some of the depths of the drilling, maximum 400 meters, 300 meters within Cortland North and Cortland South. So really shallow, which will provide a lot of opportunity. Many people will just easily associate shallow copper to oxide copper. And we know that we certainly have a lot of oxide copper within the system as well as sulfide. So I touched on the historical drill results, and this is what we have. So there is no core. Unfortunately, the core was destroyed, and that's primarily based on some of the historical kind of feuding and legal battles that happened between some of the property owners. People that were storing the core weren't getting paid, so they just mowed it over. So it's really unfortunate that 36,000 plus meters of core has been destroyed. However, that also provides us an opportunity. We do have the drill logs, we do have the assay data, so we need to drill this. So we're not going to twin holes per se, because twinning holes is just kind of wasting money in many, many ways. We have to confirm a lot of the historical drill results. So while some people might call it twinning, I prefer to call it confirmation holes, because we're going to drill a lot of these areas, and we expect to be able to replicate a lot of these shallow drill results. So as you can see, we have a couple of holes here within Cortland North, over 100 meters of over 1% copper, and some pretty interesting gold and silver within the district as well. So when me and the technical team, which I'll touch on soon, will start planning some of these holes, and obviously we'll focus some of our efforts on some of the areas that we have some of the higher grade material, just to prove up these historical drill results. Portland South, once again, several holes, good copper grades and good gold grades. These are all using a 2% cutoff, or a 0.2% cutoff for copper with 3 meter and 3 meter internal dilution. So once again, many people have, or other companies are talking about copper equivalency and using different cutoff grades. We've tried to focus our efforts on a minimum grade of 0.2% copper, and it's just copper. So as we start to, drill this area, and if we were to start looking at copper equivalency, just based on some of the gold numbers that you can see here within the man part of the resource, we know that the copper equivalency will add a lot of value to this district. And once again, it's important to note that this is just within that 3-kilometer trend of shallow mineralization. So we're really excited to, as I mentioned, get the drills going. Moving over a little bit to the south is our Tombstone South project, and this is another really exciting project. So the one prospector here, Mr. Lajak, he worked at Arizona Silver when they were looking for the Taylor deposit, or now known as the Hermosa deposit, that was bought by South 32 for $1.3 billion in 2018. If you look at the core from this project, our Tombstone South project, and you look at the core from Hermosa, it looks very, very similar. So we know we have silver grades in the manganese, and South 32 demonstrated their manganese battery grade. So that's enabled them to enter into the FAST 41 process, a different regulatory process within the US, which enables them to essentially fast track the regulatory approvals. And some of the previous drilling within the area, none of it's really tested the depths of the deposit. And that's how the larger Hermosa deposit was really found once they drilled a little bit deeper. Here's just some of the limited previous drilling within our land tenements. As you can see, BHP drilled a hole in 1995. And I think they were essentially looking for another porphyry, because there is a porphyry to the northwest of our project, but it's a much lower grade porphyry. But while it may not be an economic porphyry to exploit, it does provide that heat source, which is really important for these larger carbonate replacement type of deposits. So as you can see, we've just kind of simplified some of the similarities between the Hermosa deposit as well as Tombstone. So we know we have some of the right mineralization within the upper stratas. We have that relationship or proximity to the porphyry as well as carbonate host rocks. So we're really excited to test this target. So while originally we maintained our interest certainly in this project because of the similarities to the core, it wasn't until last year when we completed a large dipole IP survey that we identified a large chargeability anomaly. I'll show you that in one moment. But this is just a very conceptual type of cross section that illustrates where we have a porphyry nearby, a major fault, which is really important for fluid flows. And then we have, the contact of the limestone units where these larger Taylor type of deposits typically form. So our IP survey identified a large chargeability anomaly, and as you would expect, there's always going to be a geophysical anomaly when you get some data done, and we didn't have to play with too many dials to identify this large chargeability anomaly that sits right in that contact of the Paleozoic and the limestone unit. So we've yet to test it. We certainly look forward to doing that in 2024. It is a little bit of a deeper target. These drill holes are proposed to be about 1,000 meters at this time, but because of the proximity to both Corral Copper and Tombstone only being about 30 kilometers apart, we'd like to be able to drill both of these at the same time because we know what we're going to get from Corral or have a strong degree of confidence what we're going to be able to get at Corral. It's shallow drilling, so we'll be able to pound out a bunch of shallow drilling relatively quickly while still drill testing this larger target.
I'm going to rudely interrupt you, Ken. I had an audience question and they're not able to stay on the webinar beyond the half-hour mark, so I figured I'd just get it in now. So Tombstone South, is there any relationship with Aztec Minerals and its Tombstone project to the north of you?
No relationship, no. It's as the viewer might have noted, it is a little bit further to the south than Aztec.
Okay, continue on. Sorry to interrupt, Ken.
No, happy to anytime. So just lastly, and I'll try to get to more Q&A. Last is our Mesa Well project. So Mesa Well is a little bit of an earlier stage project. There was previous drilling to the south of the property, but this is another geological type of concept where you're really kind of elephant hunting in Arizona. As you can kind of see where we're located in the southern part of that copper triangle, massive deposits all around. The Faraday Copper Creek project is about 25 kilometers to the west of us. I think they've done a great job. But as you can see, there's some very large deposits within this area. Previous drilling to the south of our project, both the mineralization and the alteration was intensifying as the drilling was moving towards the north. So we're still earlier stage. We'll likely do some additional geophysics, but we're certainly hopeful that the source of that mineralization, we have a nice large kind of porphyry located within our current tenements. Leadership team, so Mark Morbido is my chairman. He's had a number of successful ventures over the years, raising over $900 million in capital. But probably more importantly, he has a long track record in the state of Arizona with his involvement with Excelsior. And while Excelsior may have some startup issues from a technical standpoint, it was really a permitting success. They were the first copper mine to get a approval in the state of Arizona in over a decade. And they got their copper mine approval in 2.5 years. And that was an unconventional type of application where they were shooting acid into the ground. So, it's really building that relationship with local stakeholders and political stakeholders, which we're fortunate to have Mark as part of our team. Colleen Roach, she worked at the Pinto Valley mine in Arizona for many, many years, a professional engineer, a lot of background on water management. Tony Taylor, kind of PhD, a brilliant geologist that's helped kind of guide us forward as well. From the technical side, we've relied primarily on technical advisors rather than building out an internal management team too early. We've really focused our efforts on conserving shareholder capital as we're building out our asset base. And each one of the individuals you see here have been part of it. Chris Osterman, he's based in Tucson. We got Dan and Alan, both located here in Vancouver, and they do advisory roles for a number of other respectful companies. And Rebecca Sawyer, she led the permitting for Excelsior. So she's a great resource for us to have as part of our team as we continue to build it out. Trying to be respectful of time here. I'd be happy to just jump right into any questions that people might have rather than just kind of going through. I think most people should understand the importance of the essential metals. As I mentioned, we call them critical, but I prefer the term essential.
Sure. I've got some questions to kick things off. And again, anyone participating, feel free to enter your own questions and we'll address those as well. So, Ken, why do you think this area hasn't been developed or advanced previously? Was it just fragmented land ownership?
Yeah, I definitely think it was fragmented land ownership. Some of the property have been in certain families for over 100 years, and they weren't really interested in doing business with with some individuals that wanted to come along and try to exploit the resources. I've spent a lot of time in Arizona over the last year trying to build relationships and get a lot of the background and the history within the district. So I've sat in kind of backyards and kind of listened to some of the stories. And I do think that now that we've been able to consolidate a lot of the district, there was some feuding between landowners. Actually, when part of the property we acquired, when the stakers were out trying to stake it, there was another landowner that came out and chased them off the property with an automatic rifle. If he didn't want people staking around his property or potentially over his property. There was a company or a couple of companies that were trying to do what we've been able to succeed with back in 2010. However, for whatever reasons, it moved towards litigation, and they were kind of in litigation for a number of years. So we've been able to, rectify all of that, properties with clean title, and now we have 96,000 acres to really move it forward.
That's great. And so the 3 kilometers recently consolidated trend is mostly on patented mining claims. So that means you don't require any permitting or anything else before you can commence drilling there. Is that correct?
So let me just go back. So the Cortland North and Cortland South. So as you can see here, the brown areas are patented mining claims. So Cortland North and Cortland South fall within our patented mining claims, and the Man area falls within our BLM or federal lands, but yet we have the surface rights over it. So the hashtag line right there is surface rights. So it's not entirely accurate that there is no permitting required. There wouldn't be permitting required for us to drop a blade and build a road in certain areas because, once again, we own the surface rights. But from a drilling standpoint, we would have to just notify Arizona Water Resources and just apply and get a simple water permit. These are usually done by the drillers. They're not, politically motivated. It's a pretty routine, anywhere from 24 hours to, 7 days, I believe is the typical timeline. So that hope that answers the question.
No, that makes it more clear. Thanks. And then how does Intrepid plan to use the historical drilling data to advance and accelerate exploration at Corral?
Essentially, I like to say, we already got the playbook. We know where to drill. We have a strong degree of confidence in what we're going to get. So our focus is just to look to confirm a lot of the historical drilling data. Depending on the QP, depending on the results that we get, some of the drilling previously, there was some RC holes. So, from an RC hole to a core hole, which we plan to drill, there might be some subtle differences. But I think if we can get anywhere from 20 to 25% success with confirming a lot of the historical results, I think that's when a QP would be okay bringing in a lot of the historical data. But as I mentioned, this 3 kilometer trend is only a starting point for us. It's less than 15% of our entire property. These kind of CRD type of deposits are are typically, in clusters in some ways. So there's a number of areas that we look forward to drill testing as well. However, we're going to take the simple approach and just do confirmation drilling and try to get that news into the market more near term.
Will you focus part of the program on any step out holes or pure exploration, or will it all be confirmation drilling?
It's interesting. As you know, a lot of technical folks will have different suggestions on how to move things forward. So I do think that the first drill program will likely just try to maximize the efforts, and that's do a lot of the confirmation drilling and use that to kind of prove up areas within Cortland North, Cortland South, and Man. There's some target areas that kind of are infilled in this area, and we've just kind of simplified it as the gap zone. Some of the drilling as well was all vertical. So there's a number of, we might experiment a little bit more with some vertical holes as well. So I do think the first step will be to confirm a lot of the historical drilling before moving towards some of the step outs. But once again, we also have, Tombstone South, which we're really excited to drill test as well, because that could be a game changer for the company. Like, we know there's a large chargeability anomaly. We know it's showing something. We just don't know the grade essentially of what it might be yet. So that's why there's value in being able to drill both at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And moving on to Tombstone South, how many meters were previously drilled there?
Great question. I don't have the exact number, but as I mentioned, there hasn't been a whole lot within the key area that we're kind of focused on. So there was some drill holes up to the northeast that certainly had some silver within it, but it wasn't our main focus. Our main focus is a little bit more further down in this area.
And why did the previous operators stop before the prospective limestone unit? And what's the estimated depth of that limestone area?
It's difficult to say why they might have stopped, but essentially, I believe it goes back to their Hermosa discovery. So similar to Aztec and some of the other companies that are drilling more closely in the town of Tombstone's backyard, they were mostly looking for the shallower silver grades. And while, as you can see, there certainly was some, no one really knew of these deeper type of targets. It wasn't until the Taylor discovery that people realized that you can have these large pods of carbonate replacement deposits kind of in that contact. So I think that's essentially why individuals have just kind of kicked tires in the area before.
Got it. And are there permits still required for drilling a Tombstone?
Yeah, no, we're very fortunate. As soon as we saw that geophysical anomaly, the first thing we did was, apply for drill permits and got them in no time. I think it was about 2.5 weeks once again. So we permitted a number of drill holes, a little bit of surface disturbance to be able to move the drill rig. So all of our projects, including Mesa well, are all drill ready and fully permitted.
Right. When do you expect to start drilling at any of the projects?
We'd certainly like to be able to drill later this year. Once again, we can drill year round. Some of our technical folks and drill contractors that we've spoken with prefer not to drill in the summer months. So I'd like to be able to start drilling later this year, or certainly early next year. Once again, we're fully permitted. We're having discussions with a number of drill contractors at this stage now that we've just completed that 3-kilometer trend of mineralization. So now it's time to look to create shareholder value from the drill bit.
Yeah, I don't blame them. The temperatures this past summer in that part of Arizona were wild. I think
yes, they were.
Cook eggs on their driveway, pretty much.
Yeah.
So a couple of just more general questions. There seems to be a lot of activity going on in Arizona with Arizona Sonoran putting out their updated resource. I believe it was today or yesterday. Barksdale's got their drill permits finally, and I believe that they're currently drilling at their project in Arizona. Plus, you had that porphyry discovery further north in the Great Basin in Idaho by Hercules Silver last week. It seems like there's a lot going on. Maybe you can talk a little bit about why companies are choosing Great Basin and Arizona to explore in and kind of the potential there.
I think it's a number of reasons. Obviously, there's some great geology, and I touched on it within the Mesa well section, right? Like there still is, massive deposits to be found. A lot of the easy ones have been found, but as technology advances and, whether it be geophysics, a different way of looking at some of the geology based on some of these other success stories is really kind of opening up the opportunity for new discoveries. So, our Tombstone South, as I mentioned, I think is a great project and primed for a new discovery. Within Arizona itself, I do think you do need to focus on where you're focusing your attention. And once again, I think outside of the national forests are key. And I think, people talk about the commodity super cycle, and while the markets have been rather dismal the last little while, I think most people see that kind of heading into 2024, there's going to be a significant shift, and the demand for a lot of these, once again, I call them essential metals, are only going to continue to grow. Geopolitics gets built in, and I guess the reliance on global supply has certainly changed. So there is more of a focus on, I think, domestic supply these days. And while I'm a proud Canadian, I'm also very, very pleased to be working in the US, because I do think it's only getting tougher and harder for those that are exploring in Canada to just do simple exploration and permitting. I won't get into my political views, but I'm happy to be working in the US and the state of Arizona.
Mm-hmm. It's too bad they didn't deem copper one of the critical metals.
Actually, they have identified it as one within the US, but at the political angle. And that's why I try not to get too caught up in the term critical, because essentially it's essential. Critical is a political term that, governments across the globe will say this one is critical for us, this one is critical for us. But, essentially, if you look within North America, the trade supply between North America, Canada, the US, and Mexico, I think will kind of remain. And, these essential metals or critical metals will remain an important commodity within the districts.
Mm-hmm. I agree. What I think is interesting is we talk about, companies at various different stages of exploration in the region. I mean, we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years, anyone that puts out a technical study or anything with economics around it has been largely a selling opportunity in the market, unfortunately, which kind of shows you what type of market we're in. But where we've continued to see action is on discoveries. And I think that's really interesting for Intrepid. I mean, not to talk up another company or reference a hole that I don't actually know that much about. But if you look at the share price action that Hercules Silver got on the announcement of that hole, the market still will give credit for exploration, which I think is interesting in terms of where you're positioned and the potential to have some splashy drill results over the next 6 months.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think, I do wonder how the next, a year or two might play out for some companies, because, some companies that, have gone to market several times and, have a larger market cap, but it's just kind of based on, their share structure primarily. It may be tough because there's not a lot of companies that are still operating within, their upper range of 52-week highs or beyond. We're very fortunate where we have a supportive shareholder base that were, supportive of our desire to first build out a portfolio of exciting projects during a tough time in the market. And now that we do have these three exciting opportunities, to your point, we can have, three different significant discoveries. And, we weren't just picking up projects for the sake of picking up projects. This Corral Copper project is one that my chairman, Mark Morabito, had his eye on for many, many years. And while I originally thought I'd been able to consolidate the district a little bit quicker, it took a little bit longer. But I think that it's paying dividends to shareholders because, probably could have did it 6 months ago, but it probably would have cost us a little bit more. So there were some tough negotiations to be able to pull all this together. But I think we're well primed for discovery. And to your point with regards to technical studies, that's not something we want to rush to. There's been, other companies that have brought out historical resource estimates a little too early. And then when they do the drilling, they fail to live up to them for whatever reasons. And to your point, it's a selling event. We just want to, essentially feed the market, exciting drill results for the next 2 years as we continue to systematically step out and explore this exciting district within Corral Copper and continue to try to advance our Mesa Well and Tombstone project as well.
Mm-hmm. And you referenced your share structure. I don't think that you actually threw up your cap structure slide, so it might be good to let investors have a look at that because your structure is very tight, which is one of the key pillars for creating shareholder value, in my opinion. I had an audience question, which relates to this slide as well. So just wondering, what rationale did Crescat give when establishing their position in the company?
Rationale. I don't know if they so much gave a rationale as opposed to they knew that we had a strong technical team. Quentin Henning went to school with a couple of our technical advisors, and he had a lot of respect with regards to these individuals. And if they were supportive of different target ideas, then he would see value in that. And I do think, originally when we first started talking to Crescat, it was just Tombstone South that we had. So they're very, very bullish on Tombstone South. But then as we started to explain our, Corral Copper goals, they were supportive of that as well, noting that we're not that far away. It's in the right jurisdiction, and it's something that can create a lot of shareholder value. Crescat loves companies they put money into to drill. And, that's going to be our next step. We're going to be able to, feed the market a lot of exciting news in the months and years ahead.
So now that you've got the three core assets in the portfolio, are you looking to make any other changes to the portfolio in the near term?
I don't think so. We certainly didn't want to be a single asset company. 2 to 3 assets, I think, is great. When you start adding more, I do think investors kind of wonder, well, where are shareholder dollars going to kind of focus on? So while I'll just touch on Mesa Well as an example, it's still an earlier stage project. We have our kind of Tombstone South, which is kind of more advanced, but still a little bit more of a geological anomaly in many ways with the IP anomaly. And then we have our advanced stage Corral. So I think we're well structured with what we have and what we can kind of focus on at this stage.
Okay. And then in terms of catalysts, what sort of news items can the market expect over the coming months from Intrepid?
I think essentially some success from the drill bit. That's what we're going to change our focus from the boardroom of acquiring a lot of these exciting projects to getting out in the field and executing on drill programs. So I certainly see 2024 being an exciting year to bring the new success story to the market, a new Arizona success story, similar to some of the other companies that you've touched on. So I think we're well positioned for what lays ahead.
Great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to give us a bit of an overview, Ken, and congratulations on putting together an exciting portfolio. Really looking forward to seeing some results. If anyone has any additional questions or wants a one-on-one meeting, feel free to reach out. We'll get those set up for you. Thanks everyone for participating.
Yes, thank you, Deborah. And thank you to the Adelaide team for doing this. We certainly look forward to working with you. And as you noted, anyone that has any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out, certainly to Deborah or myself. We have a lot of information on our website, so please check that out as well. And we're starting to be a little bit more active on social.
Great. Thanks so much, Ken, and thanks everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.